Well, hello everyone. We are in Atlanta today, and we're delighted to be talking with Joel Hammond, one of our industry veterans. This past summer, at our 55th annual meeting in Ponte Vedra, at our banquet, on banquet night, I asked the group if anyone had attended all 55 annual meetings. And to be honest with you, I did not expect anyone to stand up or hold up their hand or anything, but one hand went up, and it was our good friend Joel. So I'm excited about this interview because I really don't know Joel very well. The first time I met him was 3 years ago at Ponte Vedra, and he and Rusty Ingram were running bingo night, which is a blast, as you all know, and that's where our friendship began. So let's just jump in, and Joel, tell us about yourself. Give us where you grew up, and just introduce yourself.
Yeah, Joel Hammond. Nickname is Doc, but anyway, I grew up in Columbus, Georgia, and my parents were in the real estate and apartment business, and I spent my young life working at like a slave in those apartments and houses. And we did everything from jackleg to electrician to plumbing. And keep in mind, in those days, I worked with some workers that were employed, full-time employees, and my brother and I. And that was back in the days when plumbing was an art.
Yes.
Because you had to really measure it and figure it out. You didn't have all that PVC cutting with hacksaw and all that you can. You didn't make many mistakes. So I wasn't the lead in it, but I watched it happen and did a lot of it. I did a lot of the manual part where I turned the threads and all of that. And then we rented a lot to military.
Okay, that's right. Fort Benning.
And Fort Benning, and when the people would move out, they'd be transferred out or whatever, my brother and I and the helpers would go in there and repaint and repair and do all the stuff that needed to be done to put somebody else back in it. So we were in and out all the time. One of the things brought to my mind is during the war, Vietnam War, there was a lot of turnover because troops were going to Vietnam on a regular basis. So
okay. That makes sense.
People in and out, so they didn't come and stay a long time. So we were pretty busy all the time. And I remember my dad in those days was paying us an allowance. So we were working every weekend. We were getting an allowance. And I told him, I said, "Well, you ain't paying me enough." I got old enough then. I wanted to start.
You wanted a raise.
I wanted some money, and so I went to work for my cousin ran the parts department in an automobile dealership. So he wanted a parts runner and parts boy. And so I went.
So you quit your family business?
I quit.
That's
I said,
funny.
You ain't paying me enough.
That's funny.
And I went down there and worked for my cousin and running parts and stocking, doing the stock board and all that during high school in the summers. And then when I graduated, I started Columbus College, which was a 2-year college. Part of the University of Georgia system. The university was reaching out and doing these pilot schools, and I had a bad automobile wreck.
Oh my!
And dropped out in my sophomore year, and so I went to work got a job with a parts company in the parts department of Volkswagen and CVS and Porsche, and was in there working there. And I went to Florida on vacation, and I got down there, and I was getting ready to go back to college because I had dropped out and was going to go back. And I met some guys in Florida, Panama City, who were lifeguard, and they said, "Oh, come on down for the summer."
No kidding.
Yeah. So rather than going back, then I said, "Well, I'll go back in the fall." And I lifeguarded down. I was a lifeguard in Florida, Panama City, bum, I guess you call it.
What about that?
And I met my future wife down there at the hangout. And of course, she was from Birmingham, Alabama, so I was from Columbus, and so I went back to finish Columbus College, and then we would date, back and forth, long distance, and then I went off to Georgia, and she got a job in my senior year. I think she got a job flying for Delta, and she was started out based in New Orleans, and then she was when I got out of Georgia, I got in the Georgia National Guard.
Okay.
And they sent me off for basic training and all of that, and AIT in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And so I realized then I better get back home and marry this woman.
Yes.
So I flew back during a break, and we got married, and she still was flying for Delta. And we didn't tell anybody because you couldn't be married in those days. You couldn't be married, you couldn't have children.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting.
They weighed you. You can only weigh a certain
Oh,
amount
my
of weight. Your hair couldn't
goodness.
touch it. Your uniform, that was strict in those days.
Wow.
And you had to sign a contract that you wouldn't work past the age of 40.
Okay.
And they later came back in
yeah.
with a suit, had a class action suit where they could come back, but we had children by then. And what happened was I came back, and I was working down there with my mother because I'd just gotten back from the Army. And my wife had transferred to Atlanta, and so, I was in Atlanta. I'd go back down to Columbus, and she called me one day and said, I don't have a job anymore. I said, what? She said, I'm fixed to have a baby.
Oh, my.
And they told me I couldn't work there anymore. So I started looking for a job, and I got a job with Will Scientific in Atlanta.
Now, which child was that, your first one?
My first son, my first boy, the only boy, Chris.
Chris. Oh, yeah.
You know Chris?
I know Chris, absolutely.
Yeah. And later we had a daughter, Ashley. She lives in Greenville, South Carolina. And so I was working on Chattahoochee Boulevard for Will Scientific because they quoted laboratories, and I had that lab experience in school.
Right.
And they wanted to move me to Baltimore, and I didn't want to move. And I had a friend down the road that worked for Southern Concrete and Products Company. They
What
were
about
Baltimore
that?
Mix.
Yeah.
And that was the Dobbins brothers, Hugh and Bowden. And they wanted to start up a QC lab and for concrete and block. And I came down there and went to work for them.
What year do you think that was, roughly, approximately? Even
60, almost, it was 68.
68?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. 68. I was down there some in 67 because my friend worked there, and I'd go down there to see him and stuff. But and it ended up.
So that was your entry into construction
67,
materials.
And I started promoting lightweight block, so that ended up, the lightweight area people getting interested in it. But back in Columbus, we ended up selling out a lot of stuff, and my dad passed away, and my mother retired, and so I'd go back and forth. I was in the National Guard in Columbus, that's where I joined, so I would go back and forth there, call on customers on, I'd go down there, and I ended up in the lightweight aggregate business because John Pellicone, which we all know,
Oh, yeah.
he left and went to work for Vulcan.
I didn't know that.
And they were in the lightweight business.
I didn't know that.
And I took over his job, and it was driving a 6-cylinder pickup truck with no radio, and when he left, that's what I inherited.
You inherited his company vehicle.
Yeah, and I ended up doing a lot of work with Lane Wilcox, who was the vice president of sales, and he was my mentor. Bowden Dobbins was my mentor, and he was the one in the industry. And I did what they did in those days, was plating concrete. I always called it plating concrete, where you controlled concrete, you ran the jobs.
Right.
And I went out with my unit weight bucket
and
scales and slump cone and rollometer and control lightweight aggregate jobs. And that was my introduction into the into the concrete industry, really.
Well, I tell you what, let me pause you just a quick second. And for our listeners, talk just a little bit about what is lightweight concrete, you know, the fundamentals, what is it, why is it needed, and what makes it lightweight. I think there are people that would enjoy hearing a little bit of that background.
Well, keep in mind that it really didn't take off until the 1950s.
Okay.
It was the patent ran out then. It was founded in 1916 by a man who was in the brick business. And brick are dimensionally solid when you heat them and make them ceramic. And he kept getting in part of his quarry where it would just balloon off and warp the brick, and he'd have to throw them away. And he'd throw them in a giant pile. And during World War I, there was a steel shortage.
Yes.
Because they used it all in armament.
Right.
And they captured but maritime industry in the United States, they needed the boats to send the troops over and all the supplies. And so there was a shortage of iron boats, ships.
Yes.
And they couldn't want to build them, so this guy came up with a lightweight concrete. And what happens is they made lightweight concrete boats.
Interesting. I think I've heard this story.
Yeah, when people say, well, how does lightweight concrete float? Well, it's the same displacement steel weighs per cubic foot a yard as a lightweight. Steel. So lightweight concrete was an answer. And they still have a few boats around, but not many.
And that material was
well, he expanded shale.
You
make lightweight aggregate, rotary kill expanded lightweight aggregate can be clay, shale, or slate.
Right.
Either the one. Expanded shale, clay, and slate institute is the association. And once the patent ran out, hydraulic press brick up in Ohio was one of the ones that did use the patent, and they did it. But once the patent ran out, a lot of investors started looking around to go into the business. And so there was probably about 15 to 20 lightweight aggregate plants that took off in the 50s and later years. And
So again, just for the listeners and educational purposes, so conventional, just normal weight concrete's 145 to 150 pounds per cubic foot, and then your lightweight.
Typical lightweight was 120 pound, and then you could go down. Then applications got down to 115.
Right.
And you could even get down to 80 pounds.
No kidding, I didn't know that.
If you had the expanded clays were lighter.
Okay.
And you went through as you went through the unit weights of the aggregates, it was the clays were the lightest, and then in the middle was the shales, and then the slates were the heavier.
Got you.
And Georgia Lightweight was a slate plant, so it, the average course, if you go for coarser fines were around 62, 65 pounds.
Yeah.
It's a slate, and it'd get down to 40 pounds in the clays.
That's unbelievable.
And you would get the coarse aggregate in the clays would be 38 pounds.
Yeah.
All the way up to 48, 49, 50 pounds with the slates. And the good thing about lightweight, the industry understand is you can carry more yards on the truck.
Right.
You can the trailer that's hauling the aggregate.
Yeah.
Basically carries a whole lot more aggregate volume wise. In fact, that was why I got kind of involved in transportation in my career. I had to get with the clay plant we went from, which was down in Livingston, Alabama. It was so very light that you would cube out in like a regular coal car or a stone car.
Right.
You'd cube out, and you wouldn't be able to get the minimum tonnage.
Interesting.
So they would be about 60 tons in it, and there would be an 83-ton limit minimum.
Yes.
On railroads. So you paid for 23 tons you didn't even haul, although it was full. So I went and got chip cars.
Right.
And they were big volume cars.
Of course.
And you get 90-something tons in there and move it economically. And of course, in my career, I got involved in barging, and I could barge all the way up the river.
So you became somewhat of a logistical guru. You had to, didn't
Part
you?
of my career, I was overall logistics and developed a lot of it.
Well, let me ask you this. Say a little bit about the common, who's ordering the applications. I mean, obviously elevated slabs, but just some general,
Increased productivity with a lightweight block. Yeah, during the career, over the years here, you had mason shortages.
Okay.
And what happened was they aged, and they still have that problem.
Yes.
They got up in age, and they can't work as hard and pick up as much as they used to. So a lightweight block increased productivity, even though they might cost a little more. But you weigh it out, you would save money on production.
That's pretty interesting.
And one of the biggest sales market for concrete and for block was fire resistance. And we sold a tremendous amount of aggregates all up and down the river from Chicago to Pittsburgh and all over, because of lightweight concrete. When they're designing it, let's say we did a 80 and 90 story building in Chicago.
Yeah.
They could thin the walls down because it was fire rating.
Interesting.
And so
I didn't
you think
know that.
about a 90 story building, and you got 2 more inches of rental space. That amounted a lot of money.
Absolutely.
And it was fire rated. So that was a lot of the advantages it had. And in the applications of fire rating for block, when I was telling you I went to Burke for Southern Concrete, we made in Atlanta, every basement was concrete block.
Right.
And of course, it all went poured
wall.
We
Yeah.
couldn't have enough masons.
Yeah.
And
do you think? I mean, let's pause just 1 second. That's an interesting point. So you would say that, and I guess that was probably in the mid '70s, early '70s. Was that the real push in Atlanta to poured wall foundation was related to the shortage of masons?
Had a lot to do with it, because I can remember when Ernst came in. He was one of them that came down from up north and got involved in it. Great guy, David Ernst.
Oh yeah, David's a great member, great friend.
And what happened was a guy showed up. You think about if you're doing it with a concrete block, you got to have the mason. You got to dig the footings, pour the footings. You got to get the mason in. You got to order the sand. You got to get everything out, the mortar out there, or they do come that way. But with poured walls, they just went all the way up. It was one thing. And during the time of Jimmy Carter,
yes,
the interest rate went out of sight. Builders time was of essence.
Yes.
And so what they did was
that makes
couldn't
sense.
Find the masons, and so this guy rolled into town with these forms on his trailer, and he started quoting it. Well, you could turn it over to the carpenter, and so it took off, and that played a big role in increased usage of concrete around, and not lightweight, because you couldn't find anybody to lay a heavyweight block. They were going to lay lightweight block. That was your biggest sales.
That's very interesting.
And normally, I even formed a company that called Concrete Block Systems, where you ordered the whole thing and went back and tried to promote in that area, but it never really caught on.
Take just a few moments. I think it would also be helpful if you explained who the players were, and then, and of course, there were acquisitions and so on and swaps, what have you. But without getting too deep, kind of give us a high level, the big players back then, and then kind of today, who are the main players on the lightweight aggregate side?
Well, one thing about it in those days, architects and engineers were really lightweight was new. So, I mean, they were a lot more progressive. Like John Portman designed a tremendous amount of lightweight aggregate concrete jobs downtown Atlanta. A lot of them built out of lightweight concrete. And Dave Dorr was his #1 engineer, and he loved lightweight. And we shipped a lot of it. I was on a lot of jobs with planning concrete where I, went on those particular projects. And but Williams Brothers in those days, and Harold Humphreys over at Humphreys Concrete, they were all quoting. You get spread out a lot of it between Jackson Ready Mix. And,
that's where Randall Porter started. It was at Jackson. Well, what about the suppliers then and now?
Oh, suppliers.
Yeah. No, this is good. I'm glad you brought that up about Portman. That's very interesting. But yeah, on the supplier side of the aggregates, kind of the then and then today. Who are the big names really?
Well, let me tell you what happened.
Yeah.
And I think it's important.
Yes, to tell us.
Georgia Ready Mix.
Yes.
Is we kind of got backed out of the structural market. What happened when Bill Lane bought Georgia Lightweight out of Big River in Louisiana in 1979? We ran the lightweight aggregate plant. Georgia Lightweight was still in business and it was still going. I mean, we bought in 1984. We bought Livingston and Live Light in Livingston, Alabama, and it was the clay operation. Well, the lighter the rotary kiln aggregate, the bigger the market area.
Yes.
You could haul more aggregate.
Yes.
And be competitive. And what happened was we had they wanted to put more money into that area and rather than in Georgia plant because it was a heavier lightweight. It was expanded slate, and that's where all our structural business was into that. And we literally walked. They put a new kiln in down at Livingston. They had so much aggregate they had to come in and take over the fines market.
Wow.
And the block market in Georgia and South Carolina. We sold a lot in South Carolina, and we walked on the structural market. We quit. There was no structural aggregate. The plant in Alabama can be used in structural, but at that time they were selling so much in block they didn't even look at it. And I remember going with it, and we made a coarse aggregate. But the problem was it floated in the mix. The core big aggregates would float.
Wow.
You had to push them back down.
Wow.
So what happened was when I decided to diversify the market when I became president and all that, I said, look, I know that this material will work perfect in concrete. I mean, it worked by itself. It works fine with a 3/8 top size. But would you look at somebody that had been looking at 3/4, half-inch of concrete all their life, and then they see this stuff at 3/8 top size, they just didn't feel right. I don't know what it was about it, but they didn't. And so it made it a little tough sell, but we didn't really have to sell it. But now we do. We need to be in the structural market and diversify. And what happened was I learned this from a pre-stress operation. Cornell Young owned it out in Mara, Georgia. And when I said I had a mentor with Lane Wilcox, I was in the office when I first went to work for him in Georgia Lightweight, and the guy called down there up to the plant, to the office, and he said, I bought a hollow core extrusion machine. And that's a machine that you put the concrete in the end of it, and it goes down a bed and just extrudes out hollow core slabs.
Interesting.
They cut them in 8-foot sections and whatever section you want. And he said, my cores are slumping. Would you come out here and see if you can figure out what's going on? And they were making them out of lightweight concrete. And we went out there, and I hope I'm not boring you, but anyway, we went out there, and Mr. Wilcox looked at it and said, yeah, I know what's wrong with it. And he said, can you fix it? He said, yeah, I can put intermediates in there. All concrete is gap graded.
Yes.
It goes 3/4 or half
right.
number 4, nothing on the 4.
Right.
Number 4 to 0 sand, nothing on the 4. And so we filled in the middle.
Filled in the gaps.
And he said, we rode back, and he said, I'm going to have to charge you more for it because I'm filling in that void. And
that's funny.
He said, a guy didn't want to do it, and he told the people in the plant. He said, clean that bin out there, and that's only that new stuff. That's only gonna go right there. And we're gonna use this in the pre-stress. We'll use that in Hollow Court. And when I left, Mr. Wilcox looked at me. He said, "They'll buy it all." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You'll see." So what happened about a month or so later, the guy called and he said, "I want to get a special price because I've really got this big job and and we don't want to have 2 aggregates." He said, "Well, and then we're selling lightweight for $3.75 a yard." So he only charged him a quarter more. And he said, "No, we'll just," he said, "I can't do that. I'm giving you, I can sell that by itself." And so when they hung up, he said, "You know what happened, don't you?" I said, "What?" He said, "He went down that bed, which is covered, and they steam it, and they got cylinders every so many feet." He said, "When he got to the end, he ran out of that other stuff, and he used this, and his strength went boom."
Yes.
And so he said he realized he could turn that bed quicker. That was it.
That was the end.
So I knew then you could fill in the gap with structural
Interesting.
concrete. You could use 57 stone. You could fill in with lightweight aggregate, lightweight aggregate.
Yes.
And sand, and you can make 115-pound concrete. And still strong, meet all the requirements.
Right.
So we decided to come into the market here, and it's going to be a big push on it here. Now they got 2 salesmen now they're going to be handling, and you'll be meeting them, and they're pushing some more.
So let me ask you this: I know this from watching you and Rusty doing bingo. You're a man who loves to have fun. What do you enjoy about over the years? What do you enjoy about this industry, about ready mix and concrete, and what's fun about it to you?
Well, as always, I fall back on people.
Yeah.
It's a fun group of people.
It really is.
You know the key to it, and it's the same thing that Georgia Group has always had. And they didn't. All associations didn't invite all the families, and they brought your family. And I give credit to a lot of the producers and the associate members that it just evolved into a family. And you brought your kids. My kids grew up out there.
Right.
My daughter met her husband, future husband out there, so it Ponte Vedra. And so it's been a family tradition, and I think that plays the biggest role.
Yes, I think you're right.
The other thing is, the friendships that you develop. And I remember back in the 70s, with Gay Light Corporation, they call it, Georgia Lightweight. And I noticed that the ladies, you play golf and you play tennis, but there was not really anything for the women that didn't do that.
Yeah.
Or, so I think it was Louise Pursley said something.
That's right.
About
the bridge.
Bridge.
Yeah.
So I bought a big old champagne cup.
Yeah, I've seen that cup.
And I got them all. We'd have 3 or 4 tables going, and whoever won took the trophy home, and that type of thing. And that went on for about 3 or 4 years. And then all of a sudden we had a hard time getting people that didn't play bridge.
Yes.
So we said, well, let's come up with bingo, and we started the bingo.
Now Rusty told me. Now, was it Walter?
Originally, it was me and Hank Stevens.
That was the original bingo.
Georgia Lightweight.
Was you and Hank Stevens, and then
WL and Walter Harvard took over. They were older guys, and they wanted to do it.
Sure.
So, it was fine. And we didn't fund it again. Then we started taking money and selling, like they did on the golf thing, sell teams. But we started asking for donations. And of course, you see what it's grown to.
Oh, it's incredible.
And so Hank and I took it back over again. And then Hank he was ill. And Rusty and I knew Rusty. I knew Kenny Scruggs and the family.
Oh, yeah.
I knew Rusty, who's a great guy. And Rusty and I were friends, and we just started calling him. And that's been going on quite a while.
It sure has.
And so
it's fun. That is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Rusty probably came coming to the meetings back when WL and them were calling originally.
What another question? Looking back, what would you say are the most or the more significant changes in our industry over the period that you've 60 years almost that you've been involved? What stands out or were the really notable changes? Anything come to mind in particular?
Well, I think one thing, there was a lot more promotion going on.
Yeah.
In GCMPA. I started the Georgia Masonry Institute, and what I did is I got the block producers to form that, but join the GCMPA.
Right.
GMI became part of the GCMA. I made block producers who were not in the ready mix business out of South Georgia or wherever else in North Georgia join. And they joined the GMI and paid dues, but they also paid dues for GCMPA.
That's interesting.
And we did a good. I hired Jeff Speck.
Yeah.
That's how Jeff got into the industry. He worked for PCA, and he and I had done a bunch of promotion. We went around the Southeast and set multifamily construction advisory committees. We started one in every state. We went into, once we started the GMI, we went into Florida and Alabama, and all of them got them started their own masonry divisions. They were all concrete and product associations.
Yes.
But we started promoting on the masonry end of it, and the ready mix end of it jumped right in there and hired Ken Harmon. That's how Ken Harmon got into it. Yeah. And they hired Ken, and he and Jeff were partners in promoting. I think one of the things that I think has been successful with the Georgia Ready Mix Group has been advocacy.
Yes,
I mean, they've done a tremendous amount of good work toward the weight laws.
Yes.
And
hours of service and
all of that. I think Buddy Pittard led a lot of that, starting it off. And
then Chris Davis, I think, was real instrumental, as I understood, on the weight law. Some of the big gains that we got there.
Oh yeah, that's all. A lot of that's happened since Buddy retired.
Yeah.
And all of that, and they carried it on with that, with having politicians much more involved. They were never really involved that much back in the old days.
Yeah, I mean, really, the promotions aspect. I first got involved in the association when I came to Vulcan and I think it was around 2012. And really, there hasn't been. I mean, we did some pervious promotion, but promotion's not been front and center as much as you point out, advocacy,
well, they're both important.
They're both. It's all important.
Oh yeah.
No doubt about it. As looking ahead, looking to the future now. What would you say are that some of the challenges that our industry faces today and looking ahead? Challenges that you, as far as you're concerned, what do you see? Anything concern you? Any trends? Anything in particular?
Well, I know we're going to go into the new technological age, or
right.
We're moving at the speed of light, and so there's no telling really what's going to pop up. I don't know that I have a real idea of how it be, because what you wake up every day and there's something new, and I don't know that concrete will always, have a foot.
Right, that's right.
Because
it's irreplaceable.
Well, yeah, it's been going on since Roman days or before that, and it's still going to keep going on. I think that
it's the second most used material on the planet, second only to water. Isn't that interesting? Did you know that?
No, I didn't know about water.
Yeah, it's the second. Concrete's the second most, used material.
Well, you think about the timber industry,
right,
competing, and people, it's doing a lot of it's competing in the concrete masonry parts, but it's also doing the same thing in concrete. A lot of poured walls, they're pouring on the platforms in Florida. Let's just pick Florida. They're pouring in coastal reefs, and they're pouring when they raise you above the flood level.
Yeah.
But above that, it's all wood above that.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you go, John Portman built a concrete house on Sea Island, and it was really ahead of the curve.
Really?
Oh,
That's
yeah, it's still
interesting.
down there. You go
Interesting.
into Sea Island, they let you in now.
Yeah, yeah.
You go back there. I forget the street it was on, but it's right there on the.
He was ahead of his time, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, but he was a concrete man. You know, he believed in concrete, and not steel, but concrete.
Good.
And,
That's what we like to hear.
I really don't have a feel for what.
Yeah, what's really
technology, because it's moving so fast.
Yeah.
Right now, I think that the promotion. I'm a real advocate for promotion. I always have been, and I don't think you can turn your back on promotion in anything. No matter what business you're in, even if you're in the steel business or timber business, well, you can't. You got to promote your product, and I think that it's not. They telling me you can order a house from China now, or building from China, and that's going to be slowed down, I think. But there's going to be competition technologically coming from you. You got to stay ahead of the curve.
Well, you may or may not be aware of this. You speaking of advocacy, our team got the fortified legislation passed last year, which basically it's a standard of construction, such that you get notable breaks on your insurance if you build to the fortified standard, which could be with other materials, but obviously concrete is right. I mean, it's perfect for that. So we were excited about getting that fortified bill passed.
That's great. In the past, we did a tremendous amount of fire resistive business. Promotion with the idea that it would save you money on your insurance. We did a lot of studies and all of that stuff with it. And what happened was in high interest times and all of that, the insurance companies are gambling.
Yes.
They didn't, you could build a house out of matchsticks, and they would gamble on it because they'd take that money and reinvest it.
That's right.
And that's what they were doing. They were just getting money, and they were just gambling. But now when times get tough and interest rates go down and all of that go down, then they start looking around and start thinking, well, maybe we ought to protect ourselves. Look at the fires that's been going on in California and the destruction that went on from hurricanes and all that.
That's right.
Well,
that's right.
It only makes sense to build it out of concrete or concrete block. A concrete product.
Yes.
One way or the other. Common sense tells you that, but that don't mean it's happening.
No.
You got to go back and promote.
Well, we seem to be possibly having a big common sense revival in the country. We'll see. Changing gears a little bit, and you somewhat alluded to this, but looking back in your life, who would you say were the most influential people in your life, and how did they influence you and how you managed and operated in your business philosophy? Who were the key people that influenced you?
Well, I mentioned Lane Wilcox
Yeah.
originally, but before him was Bowden Dobbins. That Bobbins family were just great people, and he pretty well would give me ideas. He said, what you ought to do this, you ought to do that. He didn't stand in my way when the lightweight people wanted to hire me, because I was using a lot of lightweight. I helped promote it through him, and he didn't stand in my way. He did everything he could to help me, and then when I got with Lane Wilcox, he trained me.
Wow.
You couldn't fool me in a concrete job, and I knew it all in my head.
Yes.
And I remember when I first started out, there was a lot of lightweight being poured, and I was a technical guy. Well, I couldn't be on 3 jobs at one time, but Lane told me, he said, now he was of old school. He said, if you don't show anybody how to do this, you'll always have a job. I was 20-something years old.
That's funny.
Pouring concrete at 3 in the morning, putting ice in it and then it was so darn hot, and then 2 more jobs would start the next day, and I said I finally, I didn't say anything to him, but I said I've got to figure out how to do this, and I'd go to the owners of the company, Horace and all of them,
Yeah.
McDougal Warren and VD Skipper, he was a champion, and I said y'all gonna have to give me somebody. I got to show them how to do this.
Yes.
I can't do
it all. Yeah.
So I developed a rule of thumb, and all they had to do is let me know 3 things, and I could tell them what to do. And then I trained them, and then once they knew the 3 things, they knew what to do. And so Lane was, but he taught me everything. I mean, we had a full lab.
Wow.
I went out there, and I mean, we do split cylinder tests. We do everything. And so.
I mean, it sounds like you had one thing is that you had that they believed in you and they trusted you and they
Oh yeah.
gave you opportunity.
Well, I don't want to. I'll tell you one story, but I won't get to it. I just like bragging, but I'm not.
No, it's all right to brag if you've really done
Well,
it.
Bill Lane was the one that comes to mind, and he's the one that hired, when I talked him into buying Georgia Lightweight, and his philosophy in business, family business, taking care of your people, generous, and give credit where credit's due, and that type of thing. And it's it paid off for me. I took a little piece of each one of them. But I remember being when Allied Concrete was in business, and they had Gene Martineau. He's the one that helped start out with Allied, and Gene. I called on Gene and all of them, and give them they'd ask me things to do and what I thought. I remember being called. Gene was going to go out in Texas and start up what was it, U.S. Concrete or whatever it was out there, and Alan Durant came over from England and he took over. And Gene called and said, "You need to come out there. I'm going to introduce everybody to Alan Durant, and he's taking over." And I said, "Okay." So I came out there, and he had the cement guy, the aggregate guy,
Yeah.
the lightweight aggregate guy, the admixture guy, everything you had in concrete they called on. And he was sitting there, and he said, "I want all y'all to get up and introduce yourself to Alan Durant." And so we told him what we did, who we did. And then Alan, he talked about how Alan was, and then he said, "Now I'm going to tell you one thing, Alan. You see all these people out here? If you want to know something, call Joel Hammond." He said, "Because he'll tell you the truth." It embarrassed the hell out of me, because I knew all these guys.
Yes.
And I said, but I remember that. It was kind of funny. But that's what I'd do. I just, I was on your side.
Yes.
And if it didn't make sense,
Yeah.
I was going to tell you it didn't make sense.
Right.
Someone else I'd like to mention that's been involved in my career and helped me, is Steve Rao, who was a past president of Hydraulic Press BIC, and he brought a lot of knowledge to our organization through Big River and Arcosa.
So you handed me a sheet of paper that showed all of your association involvement with many, many different associations over many, many years. So my question, which will be a chip shot for you, an easy question would be, what's the benefit to people joining these trade associations? Why pay dues and join the GRMCA? What does it do for a person, a company?
I don't want to be blunt, but you'd be crazy not to join. I was, as you saw from looking at all of them, I've been on the board for every association in the Southeast.
Yes.
And NCMA for the associate. I never could get beyond associates and running any of them, because the producer's the one that should run it. And
Yeah.
I was secretary and treasurer for
Right.
GCMPA for 3 terms. I was on the board 3 or 4 times. And different boards, and I saw not only in that and in transportation boards I was on, and that going as a group, that's the way to win. You're all in it together. I
Yes.
don't care how you look at it. And in concrete industry and the concrete masonry industry, you're all in it together.
Yes.
You can't expect your neighbor to carry the load, and you benefit without it by not being part of it.
Right.
And not only that, you want to be a leader. You want to show up. And the key to associations, Mr. Bill,
Yes, sir.
is committees.
It is, isn't it? The committees are the key.
I can tell you that. I've been on too many of them.
Yes.
And if the committee people, you've got people dedicated as chairman of the committees and people who will serve on that committee.
Yes.
You'll go a long way.
No, I hear you, my friend.
I've gotten up at many association meetings on the board and they say, let me tell you something. And I point to you people in your position. I said, if you don't support, he can't do it all.
Right.
He or she can't do it all.
No.
You have to support it. If you want this association to be successful, he can help you make it as successful, but you got to help him.
No, you're singing my song. I mean, that was so clear when I came back from my 5 years of retirement and came back 3 years. Almost, I'm coming up on my third anniversary of being back and being at the association, and it's been so clear exactly what you've said. It's the backbone of the association, of the committees, and my staff, myself and Emily and Michaela. I mean, we're servants. I mean, we serve this industry, and we really see ourselves, to your point, as serving the committees. We help them get meetings scheduled. We help them, get speakers. We support them, but they are these working committees that we have. In fact, I'm actually here in Atlanta today because our Safety and Environmental Committee is having their second annual Safety Environmental Conference tomorrow at Martin Concrete's facility over near Douglasville. We did our first one last year, and that committee has just done a fantastic job. Their chairman is Joseph Arp, who's with Wayne Davis Concrete, but that whole committee, I mean, they have done a superb job. They've got a great list of speakers, a good agenda for tomorrow, lots of value for people for compliance, for safety, and for the environmental compliance. So thanks for pointing that out.
When I would go and somebody would say to me, well, we're not getting anything done, and I said, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Right.
You can't criticize if you're not part of it. If you don't go in there and put your heart into it, passion, what do you expect?
Exactly.
I mean, are you in the business or are you not in the business? You are? Do you expect to grow? You expect them to grow for you? You're not going to do anything? I mean, I was very fortunate in my career to speak pretty basic and pretty blunt
Boldly, yeah.
to anybody, because they knew I was right.
Yeah.
And
No, that's good. That's good. Well, I've got one last question that I always like to ask. Always interested to hear. Just you've been around a long time. You've clearly, as you've explained, you've been involved in a lot of different businesses in a lot of different aspects. I mean, from the logistics to the technical side to the sales side, really everything about it. And for people coming into our business today, what advice would you give newcomers to our industry? Which it may be to any industry, but what advice from a veteran to newcomers? What advice would you give?
well, passion plays a large role. And if it's something that your life is going to be involved in, you need to develop passion. And you need to realize that you want to make a mark. I mean, you don't want to just show up for a job. You want to try to excel. If it's like you say, if you are just working there and you're not happy and whatever, don't be in it. But if you're in it, put your heart in it, and try to do something every day that's going to make an impact on the industry, because that's your life.
Yes. Well said, my friend. In fact, you just triggered a memory before we got started with the interview, and we were just catching up, and you told me a little quick story, and I'd love for you to tell it again. You were talking about an employee of yours, and they didn't seem like they were having fun, and then you ask them. You know what I'm saying? Remember that story? That was a good story.
Well, I've always advocated that, if you enjoy what you're doing, then you should be having fun doing it. And when I bought a couple of plants over my career, and I even went and saved one because I was known as the Terminator, and because I shut down Vulcan and Light and Arcosa. I shut down Gay Light, but that was always for market reasons. But when I went down to a plant down in Louisiana, I went out into the plant and I met people and talked to them, and I said, "Do you enjoy what you're doing?" And if they didn't like what they were doing, or if they didn't want to do it, I said, I got up in front of everybody. I said, "If you're not happy here, I'll give you 3 weeks pay. Just go ahead and leave. Give me notice. Let me get somebody in you take care of you what you're doing, but give me notice." And I'll give you 3 weeks off.
Wow.
And you can go find a job. But if you're not having fun and you're not happy where you are, and I said, we're here to. I don't want you thinking every day it's a chore for you to come to work here. You got to realize you're working. We're like a big family, and you're just part of it. And that's it. And I never really had many of them.
They didn't take you up on it.
No, because. Even with Old Council, when they owned us, they'd send people down there and they'd come back to the main office and say, "We want to work for Big River."
That's so good.
It was just, it might have come from me growing up in the industry with all the family businesses.
Yes.
And the philosophy that they had, because a lot of families were very good people and good to their employees and treated them like family. And you can do that today.
You sure can. And we have a lot of family ready-mix businesses. We still do. We've got, in fact, on our board, Joel, today we have Ben Cantrell on our board, who's Tony Cantrell of Basic Ready-Mix. Got Ben's on the board. We got DJ Ernst. We got Justin Womack. We got other, but young. I'm talking about these. And now Austin Davis is from Wayne Davis kind of. And my point. It's really a large. GRMCA is heavily family.
And it's you watched it went through a curve, in my opinion, where you all of them being bought off internationally. But typically that's what happens in businesses.
Yeah. And
then as you go along, people branch out and go out on their own, which doesn't matter what industry it is, but that's happening now.
Joel, I'm so glad that we got this on the calendar and finally got together. I've been wanting to meet up with you and do this podcast. So I'm grateful for you driving up to Atlanta today to meet with us. You look great for 82, and you look 82 in December, and I was 67 in December. What was your birthday?
3rd.
I was Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th. But it's so good to see you. Can't wait for bingo here, and it won't be long. And we'll be back in, this time we'll be, of course, in Amelia for 2 years until Ponte Vedra gets their renovation done. But again, very much appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ben.